Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and with light of the GTA 6 delay, it sounds like there's already some interesting conversations happening behind the scenes, and, well, it sounds like Xbox could be one of the most impacted studios thus far. So we're going to get into all of that, as well as a possibly secret Xbox game that seemingly was just teased. Yeah, you're going to want to stay tuned for this because this is certainly a surprise, and it's also pretty exciting. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with Metroid Prime 4. Now, I have noticed some negativity online regarding how Nintendo has showcased this game so far. You know, there is this belief that they haven't exactly advertised it enough, and what they have shown, some people believe hasn't looked all that great, which is where I tend to disagree. I mean, okay, I'm not big into the entire bike idea. That seems a little bit strange to me just because I don't really need an open world zone in my Metroid games. That's not why I like these games. But even still, I think everything else looks really good. It's definitely one of the best looking Switch 2 games graphically, and I mean, it looks like Metroid Prime, and hey, you know, it's been 18 years since the release of Metroid Prime 3, so I'm pretty excited. No matter how you feel about this game right now, though, Nintendo's advertising will ramp up next week on November 14th. Sounds like hands-on previews will go up at that time, so there you go. We should learn a lot more about Metroid Prime 4 come next week on Friday, and maybe even those open zones will start to become a little bit more interesting. Now, we also got an update for Assassin's Creed Shadows. The thing about this game is that there's been a lot of controversy about whether or not it's had success. My thing about this topic, and this goes for all AAA games, there's a fairly large crowd that doesn't seem to understand that the first month doesn't define if a game is successful. And what I mean by that is that modern AAA games have become very front-loaded. These games typically are going to reach a lot of people very quick, and that can be a good early sign, you know, especially if fans are spreading good word of mouth. But because games cost so much to make in today's world, sustainability is also just as important. You can't just simply sell 1 million copies in the first month like, you know, was the case 10 years ago and be like, okay, well, it was a success. That's not how modern AAA budgets work. Budgets have ballooned to this outrageous degree, so they do need to sustain that success over a period of time. Look at something like Dragon Age: The Veilguard as one such example. It faced a very similar situation online, and people immediately started to champion its early numbers, only to find out months later that, yeah, it flopped. And I say all that because Ubisoft was quick to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows player count, and once again, immediately people were like, oh, it's this huge success. Well, like I said back then, you might want to pump your brakes because first off, player count is not the same thing as units sold. So those numbers can be misleading, and in this case, it sounds like they very much were. Alinea Analytics just estimated that Shadows has so far sold 4.3 million copies worldwide, which, if that's true, that would mean that Shadows is one of the worst-selling Assassin's Creed games ever. Now, that could always change later down the road, but, you know, that's what it looks like right now. Now, we can also maybe point to Ubisoft's subscription because maybe a lot of people played it that way instead, and okay, but this is all the more reason that people need to cool it with claiming all of these victories a week or two after release. Give it some time. You let it have some breathing room, and then we'll see what the long-term data shows. I mean, look at something like The Last of Us Part 2, a very front-loaded game that was one of Sony's fastest-selling games of all time, but here we are years later, and it actually wound up selling a lot less than the first game did because, well, its word of mouth was pretty terrible, whereas the first game, fans were head over heels in love with it. I mean, I'm sure Part 2 was still successful in terms of how much money it made because its early numbers were beyond impressive. There was so much hype around that game, but I'm not exactly sure if Sony was thrilled when they learned that it left a lot of money on the table because it couldn't sustain that early success. So that's all I'm saying. Now, speaking of success, though, I think we can pretty definitively say that the Dark Souls franchise has been beyond successful. I mean, for one, this series has quite literally spawned its own genre. I mean, that already says a lot in its own right. But yeah, Bandai Namco just announced that they've sold nearly 40 million copies worldwide. I mean, for all of the people out there that have complained about its difficulty and how it needs an easy mode, well, I mean, the results kind of speaks for itself. From Software committed to their challenging philosophy, and gamers heavily rewarded them for that. This tells us that this is what their fan base wants, and the thing is that their fan base has only grown since that point. Look at Elden Ring. That game has sold like 30 million copies so far, which is just crazy to think about. But I think a large portion of their success comes from their challenging philosophy. I mean, let me just say it this way. If you don't like challenging games, that's perfectly fine. That just means that you're not From Software's demographic. And that's important to understand because everything in life isn't made for you specifically. It's okay for things to have different core audiences, and that's just the reality of things. But the good news here is that, there's also a lot of other games that does target your specific demographic, and while those games might not necessarily appeal to the Soulsborne audience. So all I'm trying to say is that not every game is made for everybody. In fact, I'd even argue that there's no game that's made for everybody. Otherwise, unbundled games would have 100% attach ratios, which, we've never seen that before. Either which way, though, big congrats to Bandai Namco, From Software, and to all of their fans. All right, now let's just go and talk about the aftermath for the Grand Theft Auto 6 delay. As I mentioned yesterday, this will have a major impact for next year's pipeline of games. We had previously heard that developers and publishers are doing pretty much everything they can to avoid a release date near GTA 6 because they feel like their game will be overshadowed. You have to remember that GTA 5 has sold more than 200 million copies. I'm going to go and repeat that, 200 million copies, which is almost unreal to say. And even if you look at the GTA 6 trailer, it right now has 268 million views. That is almost unbelievable. And I say all that because there is an expectation that GTA 6 will be the biggest game launch of all time. It very well might sell 15 or maybe even 20 plus million units in its first month alone because the hype for this game is crazy ridiculous. That's also why I said before that even though its development time has been beyond ridiculous, there's no doubt about that, but this is the one franchise that can kind of get away with that just because no matter how ridiculous its budget is, they will still make that money back plus a lot more. Either which way, though, this morning, Tom Henderson posted this over on Twitter. Some very interesting meetings at other studios this morning following the announcement of GTA 6's delay. And okay, that doesn't exactly tell us a lot on its own, but shortly after, the website that he writes for posted this article. GTA 6 delay could impact Halo Remake, Gears E-Day, and next Call of Duty. All of these games, including Fable, could possibly be planned for next fall, and that means that we could see a lot of shuffling around for them. And this also goes to other publishers and developers as well. Sony's Wolverine has been questioned as one such example, but interestingly, Insomniac today did double down on their release date. I'll actually post their tweet here. So at least so far, they do seem to be pretty committed to their fall release, despite GTA 6. But why this is so important is because this means one of two things for any game that's impacted. They can either rush out their release ahead of schedule, which could result in a buggy game, or they could possibly delay their game to early 2027. Now, right away, I don't foresee that happening to Call of Duty. My prediction is that Microsoft and Activision will release in October instead of November. I just think that franchise is too big for them and too important for them to delay into 2027. But there are still questions about Halo, Forza, Gears, and Fable. Now, again, if I were to guess, Gears could release in August, Halo possibly in September because it also needs to avoid Call of Duty considering they, are part of the same genre. Then Forza could either launch in October next to Call of Duty or possibly in December. Maybe they could launch 2 games in a single month, and if they do that, they can possibly make it work out. But if not, that still leaves the question of Fable. I do think that's the one game that could be a wild card. If one of these games does get delayed into 2027, which I'm not predicting, but if that does happen, Fable would probably be my guess. Now, the reason I don't think that's going to happen is because Xbox has already talked about, next year being their anniversary year, and they want to release all of these games during their 25th anniversary. So I think they'll find a way to get all of these games scheduled for next year, but right now it does seem like they're kind of maybe possibly shuffling their plans around to try to fit them into different months to maybe avoid GTA 6. Again, though, Microsoft is definitely not the only publisher that's being impacted by this. They're currently being talked about right now, but I imagine there's a lot of developers and publishers right now that are scrambling for new release dates. If anything, though, just to kind of look at the positive, May will likely get some more game announcements here sometime soon. All right, now one last thing before we go, though, because Crash Bandicoot fans now believes that Beanox teased a Crash Team Racing nitro-fueled sequel, and the reason for this is because they briefly posted a new banner online, as you can see here. Now, this might not seem like a big deal at first, but eagle-eyed Crash Bandicoot fans quickly noticed that the Crash Team Racing concept art in the top left is completely new, and apparently it's the only art in the entire banner that is new. And to make matters even more interesting is that this version of Crash is seemingly based on the Crash model in Crash Bandicoot 4, which, if you're unaware, in Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, he was based on the Insane Trilogy model. So it is a little bit odd to see this completely new concept art come out of the blue that we've never seen before, that also doesn't seem to be based on Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled at all. So that does beg the question, could there possibly be a new Crash Team Racing in development, and could this be our first tease? For that matter, we've also been hearing about a Crash Bandicoot Netflix series, so, maybe Xbox and Activision are looking to promote the Crash series more going forward, which would be absolutely fantastic news. And to add fuel to the fire, after fans took notice of this banner on social media, Beanox quickly took their banner down, and, could that possibly be an admission of guilt? I'm not so sure about that, but as a fan of Crash Bandicoot, I'm at least hoping the rumors are true. If it is, though, the fact that they're already teasing it could possibly indicate for a somewhat soonish reveal. Maybe a 2026 release? I'm going to cross my fingers, but we'll see. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.